I've signed a lot of contracts in my life. NDAs, vendor agreements, social media embargoes, even that 1-year subscription to the gym I never went back to. But none of them ever made my ears ring, or pulse like something alive, or flash on the screen like a camera went off inside the document itself. And yet, I clicked accept, because that's what you do when the CEO of Vale Holdings personally sends you a project file with a single message: "This is yours. Don't disappoint me." I didn't disappoint. Not yet, anyway. The office looked like it was designed by a minimalist with a god complex. Black stone floors, matte steel accents, angular glass panels. Everything so clean it made me feel like a smudge just by walking in. The only warmth came from the occasional live plant that probably cost more than my couch. I worked on the 27th floor, right below the executives, close enough to hear whispers, not close enough to matter. That changed the day the Cyrex International campaign landed in my inbox. Very important person client, rebrand, full spectrum media push, and me, Riley Monroe, brand manager with 10 years in the trenches, suddenly at the helm. No one told me why I got it. Not my manager, not HR, not even the marketing director. Just a single line on the approval form, cleared by NV Neron Vale. The man was a myth. Some employees joked he only worked at night. Others swore they'd heard his voice in their dreams. I'd only seen him once, at a distance, and that had been enough. Sharp suit, sharper cheekbones, silver and black everything. I swear even his cufflinks looked dangerous. I clicked through the contract quickly. Too quickly. Legal was copied on the thread. Everything looked standard. Deadlines, deliverables, confidentiality clauses. One section was labeled Binding Terms of Execution, which I skimmed without much thought. I remember hesitating for just a second. Not because of the legalese, I eat fine print for breakfast, but because the signature page glitched, just a flicker. A blink of light on my screen, then silence, and then this pressure behind my eyes, like a headache that hadn't arrived yet, like something being poured into me, or out of me. And then it was gone. Email confirmed, contract signed. The moment passed, I closed the tab, and told myself, stress. You're tired, you've wanted this for years. Don't ruin it with overthinking. The next morning I woke up at 5:03 a.m. without an alarm, and I felt amazing. I made a full breakfast, something I hadn't done in months, and rewrote 3 pitch decks before 8 a.m. Words came faster. Ideas clicked into place like they'd already been formed. At the office I was different. I felt it, and so did everyone else. Claire from Digital looked at me twice before asking who styled my outfit. Alex, my assistant, offered to get me coffee, something I usually did for him. Even the marketing director paused in the hallway and said, "Keep it up, Riley. Whatever you're doing, whatever I was doing." I wasn't doing anything, except thinking faster, reacting sharper, noticing things I never noticed before, like how the intern in finance was embezzling petty cash, or how the client's smile during Zoom calls never reached his eyes, or how the glass on the 27th floor conference room had a faint reflection delay, as if the light wasn't quite synced. I chalked it all up to adrenaline. Until Thursday. That was the first time I saw him up close. I was in the elevator running through a launch sequence in my head, when the doors opened at floor 30, executive level. No one ever rode down, no one ever rode, period. They used private lifts. But Neron stepped in like gravity answered to him. He didn't speak, didn't even look at me at first. Just stood there, hands in pockets, black trench coat hanging off his shoulders like it belonged in a noir film. I kept my eyes forward, and then, "You're adapting," he said. I blinked. "Sorry?" He turned, slow and deliberate. His eyes were a pale gray, the color of lightning through clouds. "You signed 4 days ago. That's unusually fast." "Fast for what?" He didn't answer. The elevator dinged. We reached my floor. Before I could step out, he added casually, "Try not to burn out, or anyone else." I turned to ask what the hell that meant, but he was already gone. By Friday, things got weirder. I hadn't slept, not because of stress. I just didn't need to. I wasn't hungry, but I could smell everything. Ink, metal, the way digital screens vibrated faintly under fingertips. And when Claire tried to hijack part of the project in the morning meeting, I stared her down. She stammered, lost her train of thought, apologized. I didn't say a word, but I felt something ripple, like a shadow moved behind my eyes, like my will was louder than my voice. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt powerful. That night, I got the calendar invite. From Neron Vale, subject, review time, 8 p.m. location, office 31A. His personal office. I didn't ask questions, I just showed up. It was darker than I expected. One lamp, no overheads, shelves of books, and an old carved fireplace, even though we were 31 stories up. Neron stood by the window, back turned. I cleared my throat. He spoke without looking. "You weren't supposed to survive that contract." I blinked. "Excuse me?" He turned, slowly, calmly, like a man who already knew all the answers. "You weren't supposed to survive that contract, Riley." My hands curled at my sides. I straightened my shoulders, lifted my chin. "And yet," I said, "here I am. Still in your office, still not afraid of you. There are things you expect to hear in a high-rise executive office. Talk of margins, market shifts, maybe some veiled threats about productivity metrics. You weren't supposed to survive that contract isn't one of them." I stared at him. Neron Vale, in his immaculate charcoal suit, standing in the half-lit shadows of his office like a god of bad decisions. I expected some twisted metaphor, maybe corporate speak for burnout or failure. But something in the way he looked at me, not angry, not confused, but intrigued, made my skin prickle. "I don't know what game you're playing," I said, "but if this is your way of firing me, you'll have to do better than cryptic threats and mood lighting." His mouth curved slightly. Not a smile, something colder. "That contract was not meant for you to retain anything." "Retain?" "I followed every protocol," I snapped. "You can check with legal. The file came from your office." He nodded. "I sent it. It was meant to bind your body as a temporary vessel. For power." I stared. "For what now?" He took a step forward, unbuttoning his jacket with unnerving grace. "You signed a demonic contract, Riley." "Why not? And you're what? A demon?" I folded my arms, bracing myself for a punchline. "Please tell me HR knows." "HR works for me," he said. "They've signed worse." He wasn't joking. That was the worst part. "Look, Neron, if this is some kind of psych test, do you feel different?" He interrupted, voice calm, faster, stronger, perceptive in ways you weren't before. I hesitated. That was a mistake. He moved to the desk, picked up a metallic paperweight, one of those stylized, high-design things executives like to collect, and held it out to me. "Crush this," he said. "Excuse me? Use both hands if you must." I narrowed my eyes. "Is this supposed to humiliate me? Consider it a demonstration." With a deep sigh, I took the paperweight. It was cold, heavy, solid metal. I gripped it with both hands, preparing to fake some effort. But the moment my fingers closed around it, something surged. Not through my hands, but through me. Like pressure from the inside out. And the paperweight bent. I gasped and dropped it. It clattered to the floor, visibly warped. My palms were unmarked. My breath caught. I looked at Neron, whose eyes were now glowing faintly, silver fire behind storm clouds. "What the hell?" "You absorbed it," he said, voice tight. "Not just the command, the power." "I didn't mean to," I snapped. "No one ever does." He stepped around the desk, circling me like I was something in a glass case. "But they usually don't remember. The average human forgets the entire exchange within an hour. The power burns out. Temporary. Simple. So why not me?" He stopped. Stared at me. "That's what I'm trying to understand." The silence stretched. My hands trembled. I clenched them into fists. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly. "You gave me demon powers through a contract I didn't read. You signed it. Because you sent it. And now, somehow, you've retained a portion of my power. Against all protocol. Against balance." His jaw flexed. "You were supposed to be a vessel. Temporary. Clean. You're not, gee, sorry for ruining your supernatural business model." He didn't laugh. He didn't move. "You're a breach," he said finally. "An anomaly. I've never encountered this before." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I walked to the desk and pressed my palms against the cold surface. "So what now?" I asked. "You kill me, take it back by force? If I could, I would have already—" His honesty shook me more than any threat. "I don't want this," I whispered. "I didn't ask for it." "And yet," he said, stepping closer, "you're still here. Not running, not broken. That's unusual." I turned to face him. We stood close, too close. His gaze was intense but not cruel, just searching. "I don't break easy," I said. His voice was low, but I felt it down my spine, not from fear, from something else, something I couldn't name yet. The walk out of his office felt longer than it was. The hallway seemed to stretch, the lights too bright, my breath too loud. When the elevator doors closed behind me, I finally let out a sound, half laugh, half scream, demon, power, vessel. What the hell had I signed, and why did part of me, a very stupid, very reckless part, feel alive for the first time in years? And neither, apparently, was Neron. They say power changes people. That's not entirely true. Power reveals people, and in my case it revealed just how many knives were aimed at my back. By Monday, I was the unofficial star of the Cyrex campaign. Clients were thrilled, timelines ahead of schedule, and I'd even managed to talk a notoriously stubborn influencer into a full product collab. I should have felt great. Instead, I felt watched. Not by Neron, though his shadow hung over every email with his initials at the bottom, but by the people I used to work alongside. Claire was the first to shift. She'd been circling the Cyrex campaign since day one, waiting for someone to trip. At 35, she'd spent her career building a pristine, polished persona, soft voice, beige wardrobe, always just happy to support. Behind the scenes, shark in nude heels. I caught her accidentally copying herself instead of me on key briefs. Once, she slipped a wrong version of the logo into a shared folder. I only found it because I had the real one memorized. She smiled when I called her out. "Oh, my mistake," she said sweetly. "Things must be moving so fast for you lately." They were. And not just professionally. Ever since the elevator conversation, since Neron's confession, I felt like I was vibrating under my skin. Like something was awake in me, pacing. I wasn't sleeping. Wasn't eating much. Didn't need to. I saw patterns. Heard tone shifts. I could walk into a room and sense tension before anyone said a word, which is how I knew that Alex, my assistant, was hiding something. I liked him. But lately he'd been off, avoiding eye contact, slipping out early, acting twitchy every time my phone buzzed. The email thing happened Wednesday. I was prepping for a major client call, pitch ready, timing perfect, but when I opened my inbox to pull up the final brief, it was gone. The version I spent hours on, nowhere. I found a previous draft buried in the trash, deleted manually, deleted by Alex's login. He stammered when I confronted him. "Oh, I thought that was the old one, Riley, I swear. I was cleaning up folders." I didn't yell, didn't accuse, I just looked at him, and whatever he saw in my face made him flinch. Thursday was the breaking point. We were mid-client meeting, everything was prepped. I'd triple-checked the presentation. My gut buzzed with that strange clarity I was starting to recognize as borrowed power. And then Claire spoke. "We'll be showcasing a new slogan concept," she said smoothly, clicking to the next slide. My slide. I blinked. She'd stolen it. Word for word. Font, layout, phrasing, all mine. My jaw locked. Everyone else was nodding politely. The client looked impressed, and I snapped. Not in the way people do when they lose their temper. This was deeper. I stood, walked to the head of the table, placed both hands flat on the glass surface. The entire room jumped. A sharp, echoing crack split the silence. The glass beneath my hands spiderwebbed, not shattered, but deeply fractured, as if something inside it had broken away from me. No one breathed. Claire paled. Alex dropped his pen. Even the client looked like he was calculating whether to be terrified or impressed. Footsteps echoed behind me. Slow, measured, expensive. Neron. He didn't speak, didn't even look at the damage. He simply swept the room with his eyes and said flatly, "Everyone out." They obeyed like schoolchildren. No one even asked why. When the door clicked shut, the silence was unbearable. I stood still, hands still clenched. Neron crossed the room, examined the fractured table, then turned to me. His tone was glacial. "If you don't learn to control yourself, I will do it for you." It wasn't a threat, it was a fact. I looked up at him slowly, my pulse pounding in my ears. But I refused to step back. "Try it," I said. "See what happens." His eyes narrowed. Not in rage, in calculation, like he was reevaluating me. Like I'd stopped being a variable and started being a rival. We stood like that for several seconds, energy crackling between us like exposed wires. I could feel my skin buzzing. I didn't know if it was adrenaline or his power or mine. His gaze flicked to my hand, the bones unbroken but faintly glowing under the skin, like light was trying to push through. He tilted his head slightly. "You're becoming something else," he murmured, "and I don't know if I like it." I smiled without warmth. "Neither do I. I smelled her before I saw her. Not perfume, something sharper. Burnt citrus, heat, and something metallic underneath. Like the crackle of ozone right before a lightning strike." She walked into the office like she owned it, like she designed it. Red dress, blood-slick fabric hugging every perfect line of her perfect body. Nails like glass daggers, hair cascading down her back in glossy waves. Her heels didn't click on the floor, they punctuated it. And when she smiled at me, it was the kind of smile that said, "I've ended empires with less effort than it'll take to break you." "Consultant for the Cyrex campaign," she said, offering a hand I didn't take. "Lucille," just that, no last name, no explanation, just a name that tasted like fire. Claire immediately looked like she'd found a new religion. Alex looked like he was trying not to pass out. I stayed seated. "Riley Monroe," I said evenly, "project lead. You must be late to the orientation I never approved." Lucille's eyes sparkled. Not kindly. "Oh, I don't need orientation. I've been here before. Long before you." That's when I knew. This wasn't just some outside hire or demonic temp sent to stir the pot. This was her, the one who'd been in Neron's past, the one who knew the rules of the game, because she helped write them. She made herself comfortable, too comfortable. Every meeting that day she attended, smiling, observing, occasionally dropping suggestions that undermined mine with casual cruelty. I suppose that slogan could work, if the brand were aiming for mediocrity. "I see what you're trying to do with the color palette. Very brave." By 4 p.m., I wanted to stab something. Preferably her shoes. By 5 p.m., I caught her alone in the break room, sipping espresso like it owed her a favor. "Is there a reason you're here?" I asked, arms crossed. She tilted her head. "Besides watching you spiral?" I didn't flinch. I'd learned. Demons feed on fear. I gave her nothing. "You're wasting your time," I said. "I'm not giving up the project." Lucille gave me a look that was almost pity. Almost. "Oh, sweet thing," she said softly. "This isn't about a project. It's about power. His power." My stomach clenched. She stepped closer. Her voice dropped an octave, rich and dangerous. "You weren't meant to keep it. You were meant to carry it, burn out, and forget. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked." "I guess I broke the rules," I said, though my voice was tighter than I liked. She leaned in, breath warm against my ear. "Humans always think they're special, until they realize how fragile they really are." Then she smiled, turned, and walked out like a warning. I just worked, and tried not to feel the crack inside me widening. Because what if Lucille was right? What if this power wasn't mine to hold? What if Neron was just waiting for me to fall apart so he could collect the pieces and give them back to her? At 8:46 p.m., I knocked on the door to Office 31A. He didn't answer right away, just said, "Come in." He was at the window again, like always. As if the city held secrets he could decipher if he stared long enough. I didn't waste time. "Is she here to replace me?" He turned. No surprise in his face, no guilt. "Lucille has no authority to do anything unless I give it to her." "That's not a no." He watched me. Calm, controlled, as always, and I broke. Was I a mistake, Neron? His eyes narrowed slightly. Still, he said nothing. So I filled the silence with everything I'd been holding back. "You picked me. You sent me that contract. You knew something about me was different. Or at least you suspected. But now she's here, and suddenly I'm not safe anymore. I'm not predictable. I'm a risk. So what am I, Neron? A failed experiment? A fluke? An embarrassment you're trying to erase? The words trembled on the way out. I hated that. Hated how much I wanted him to say something real. He stepped closer. No shadows this time, no menace, just Neron. And when he finally spoke, it was quiet. Not cold, no. He held my gaze. You're not a mistake. You're the one thing I can't rewrite. I froze. Of all the answers I expected, that wasn't one of them. You rewrite people? I asked. I rewrite outcomes, he said. That's what demonic contracts are. Revisions, temporary fixes, alternate paths. And I'm not temporary. He looked almost amused. Almost. You're interfering, and I don't know how. But I'm not going to remove you. My throat felt tight. Why not? A pause. Then, not a smile, but something softer in his expression. Because you're not just holding the power, you're changing it. The office at night didn't feel like the same place. Gone were the clattering heels, the hum of forced small talk, the low-grade panic of deadlines hovering like storm clouds. What remained was silence, and the echo of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like they too were waiting for something to break. Neron's office glowed dimly behind me as I leaned over the large project board in the war room. The meeting today had been a disaster. Cyrex's head of marketing, a walking ego in loafers, had rejected our pitch with all the grace of a toddler refusing broccoli. Claire had conveniently disappeared before the fallout, and Lucille had smiled throughout, like she was already designing my professional obituary. I was 2 seconds from tearing the entire campaign apart when his voice came from the doorway. You weren't wrong. I turned. Neron stood with his sleeves rolled to his elbows, jacket off, hair slightly tousled, which somehow made him more dangerous, not less. He held 2 glasses. One of them clinked softly in his hand as he crossed the room and handed it to me. I didn't ask what it was. I drank, warm, smoky, smooth. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was charged. I wasn't wrong, I echoed, setting the glass down, but it didn't matter. Cyrex doesn't want vision. They want flattery. He nodded once. And Claire knows how to flatter. I narrowed my eyes. Don't tell me you admire that. I don't, he said. But I understand it. Claire plays the game. You're rewriting it. Something in his tone sparked a nerve. Is that why you're so obsessed with control? I asked. So you can predict the outcome of everything? He said nothing. I stepped closer, arms crossed. You monitor everyone. You keep your office like a stage set. You plan 5 steps ahead so you never have to feel anything in real time. Still no answer. I tilted my head, voice sharper now. You want to rewrite outcomes, but God forbid one of them surprise you. His jaw flexed. I'm not your enemy, Neron, I said more quietly. But I'm not going to apologize for not fitting into the neat little structure you built for your world. He walked past me slowly, setting his glass down beside mine. His movement was deliberate. Like every step, every gesture had weight. When he turned back to me, something in his eyes had shifted. The silver had dimmed, softened around the edges. You think I enjoy this? He said, voice slow, wielding power like a scalpel, cutting off pieces of myself so nothing leaks out. I stared at him. I don't feel things the way humans do, he continued. I control. I shape. Because if I don't, I destroy. And what makes you think you haven't already? He looked stunned, not because I'd hurt him, but because he hadn't expected me to hit that nerve. Maybe the real fear, I said, isn't destroying something. It's wanting something too much to risk it. The silence that followed crackled. He stepped closer. So did I. We were inches apart now. The heat between us not metaphorical anymore. His hand lifted slowly, fingers brushing the side of my face, barely a touch. Like he wasn't sure if he was allowed. Or maybe, if he touched me fully, something irreversible would happen. You throw off my balance, Riley, he said, barely more than a breath. I couldn't breathe. His lips hovered above mine, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. My heart thundered, my skin tingled, my power, his power, pulsed under the surface like a drumbeat. And just when I thought he would cross the line, he pulled back. No sudden movement, no dramatic exit, just a quiet withdrawal like something inside him had snapped tight again. I exhaled too sharply. My voice came out ragged. "So you are afraid of losing control after all." He met my gaze, and for the first time, just for a second, there was something fragile in his expression. Something human. I should have seen it coming. The signs were there, the late nights Alex suddenly forgot to log, the half-empty shared folders, the lingering looks when he thought I wasn't watching. But I wanted to believe he was just overwhelmed, or insecure, or still recovering from that little stunt with Claire's stolen pitch. I didn't want to believe he'd betray me. It started with an email from the client, a forwarded link, no message, just a subject line, "Is this final?" I clicked. It was the early version, the rough one, half-formed slides, placeholder visuals, unapproved tagline, no narrative structure. It wasn't just unfinished, it was unprofessional, and it had my name on it. The blood drained from my face. I checked our server access logs. The final file was untouched, but the draft version, accessed yesterday, emailed. From Alex's credentials. He didn't even try to hide it. By noon, the damage was done. The client demanded a call with upper management. Threats of pulling the contract. Legal started whispering about liability. HR scheduled a discussion. Neron, stone, cold, silent. He sat at the head of the executive conference room during the call, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. He let the client vent, let the director scold, let everyone pile the blame onto my shoulders without saying a word, not even a glance in my direction. By the time I walked out of that room, I was one bad headline away from being expendable. "Riley," he started. "No," I said, voice low. "Don't lie. Not now. I thought it was the right file. I was trying to help. You deleted the real one," I snapped. "You replaced it. You sabotaged me. I didn't mean to ruin everything." "But you did," I said, softer than I felt. "Why?" He swallowed hard. And then, quietly, brokenly, he said, "Because you stopped needing me." That hit harder than I expected. "I always appreciated your help." "Yeah, but that's not the same thing, is it?" he said, eyes wet but defiant. "You started glowing, Riley, literally and metaphorically. And I was just the guy who fetched your coffee." I stared at him. No words came, because in his own way, he was right, and that made it hurt more. I spent the rest of the day trying to put out fires, rebuilding the final deck, rewriting the timeline, managing panic. But the worst part? Neron didn't say a word, no text, no call, no sudden appearance in my shadow, nothing. And for the first time since this whole thing started, since the contract, the power, the strange connection between us, I felt alone. Server log update. Access granted to a hidden folder. Username, in Vale. I didn't think, I just opened it. Inside was a single file, Claire_confession_recording.wav. I hit play. Her voice came through instantly, smooth, rehearsed. Of course I knew it wasn't the final version, but I figured if Riley looked incompetent, they'd hand it over to someone more experienced. Silence. Then Neron's voice. "And in exchange for that little reveal, what exactly did you want from me, Claire?" She laughed. "A small contract, no soul, just influence." Another pause. "Done." I sat back, heart racing. He knew. He'd known the whole time. He let it happen. Let me fall. So Claire would bury herself. So the contract would expose her. Legally, publicly, strategically. He hadn't stepped in, because he'd already handled it. I found him on the rooftop terrace, exactly where I didn't expect him to be. Cold air whipped around us. The city lights buzzed below. He didn't look surprised when I appeared. "You could have told me," I said. You let me think you didn't care. You think too linearly," he said, not unkindly. "You measure protection in proximity. I measure it in results." I folded my arms, hugging myself against the wind. "She nearly ruined me. She ruined herself." A pause. He glanced at me, something softer in his voice now. I gave her rope. She chose to hang herself with it. I exhaled slowly. "You could have taken credit. I didn't do it for credit." He turned to face me fully. "I didn't do it for the company. or for control. I did it for you." Those words felt like a hand pressed flat against my chest, grounding me. My throat tightened. "I thought you only made moves that served your power." "I did," he said. "But this time, protecting you was the power. I didn't fix the mess overnight, but I did walk into the next client meeting like I owned the building. Hair tied back, navy suit, no backup, just me, a presentation, and a heartbeat that refused to race. Then I opened my deck, clean, confident, refined down to the syllable. But it wasn't just the pitch that changed the mood. It was me. I spoke clearly, controlled the energy, answered questions before they were asked, read the subtle shifts in posture and tone, predicted objections and neutralized them like chess moves. At one point, the projector glitched. The screen flickered, then flared too bright. People flinched. I didn't. I raised a hand, calm and casual, and with the faintest flick of my fingers, the projector dimmed back to perfect balance. Silence. No gasps. No accusations. Just wide eyes and odd looks like I was something new. Something they couldn't define. And that's exactly what I wanted. The meeting ended in a handshake and an awkward begrudging. We're excited to move forward. It wasn't applause, but it was victory. Later that afternoon, I found Alex waiting by my desk. He didn't speak at first, just held out the lanyard with his ID badge, the quietest resignation imaginable. "I'm not running," he said softly. "I just figured you shouldn't have to fire me." I looked at him for a long time. "You could have told me you were struggling." He smiled, not bitter, just tired. "You were evolving, Riley. I was trying not to disappear in your shadow." I sat down, gestured for him to do the same. He hesitated, then lowered himself into the chair opposite mine. "I didn't mean to sabotage you," he said, "but if I couldn't be useful, I thought, maybe I could at least be important by being the problem." "That's not how you stay important, Alex," I said gently. "That's how you make yourself replaceable." He nodded. "I don't hate you," I added, "but I can't trust you either. I know." We sat in silence. "I'm going to find something else," he said. "Start over. Somewhere I don't have to be scared of someone else shining." "That's brave," I said, and I meant it. Before he left, he turned back to me. "You're not what I expected, Riley, not even close." I smiled faintly. "Neither am I." By evening, the office emptied around me, but I stayed. Finished up numbers, adjusted timelines, cleaned up decks. I didn't have to, but I wanted to. Because for the first time, this work wasn't just about proving I could do it. It was about choosing how I would do it, and who I was becoming in the process. I took the elevator to the rooftop just after 9. The wind was cool but not harsh. The city below buzzed with the usual noise: taxis, sirens, soft music from rooftop bars blocks away. Neron stood by the railing, as if he were the one holding the skyline in place. He didn't turn as I approached. I stopped beside him, arms resting on the cold metal edge. "Client's back on board," I said. "No bloodshed, just persuasion." He nodded slowly. "And Claire? HR's handling it. She won't touch another campaign here." A beat of silence. Then he said, "Alex, gone. On his own terms." I paused. I let him go. Another pause. "You don't sound angry," he said. "I'm not." He turned, finally looking at me. "You've changed." "No," I said. "I just stopped asking for permission." He studied me. The wind pushed my hair back from my face, and I didn't care how I looked in that moment. I felt whole. "Whatever you were trying to make me into," I said quietly. "You failed." He said nothing. I smiled, slow, sure, unshaken. "I'm not your vessel anymore, Neron. I'm my own damn fire." His eyes flared, not in anger, not in power, just awareness, recognition, not of something he controlled, but something he'd unleashed. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. Not infernal, not threatening. Warm, grounded. "I know," he said, and for the first time I believed he did. The fire in Neron's office crackled like it knew something sacred was about to burn. I stood near the fireplace, watching the shadows move along the walls like they were listening. The city glimmered behind us through glass, cold, distant. But in here, it was all heat. Neron pulled a black envelope from his desk drawer. No logo, no seal, just heavy paper that hummed with something old. He walked over and offered it to me. "It's yours," he said. "The original." I took it. The moment my fingers touched the envelope, a faint vibration ran up my arms. Power, memory, binding magic. "You can burn it," he continued. "It'll release us both. No more ties, no more bleed. We walk away clean." I stared down at it. This contract, the one I hadn't read, hadn't understood, had changed everything. My body, my mind, my life. I glanced up at him. His face was unreadable, but something flickered behind his eyes, something like hope or fear, maybe both. I nodded, tore the envelope open, pulled out the parchment. It looked nothing like the version I signed digitally. This was handwritten, ancient, shimmering with ink that shifted under the firelight. And then, without hesitation, I tore it in half. The magic didn't scream. It didn't resist. It sighed, and then dissolved into ash. Neron watched the paper burn, his jaw tight, like he was bracing for something. But nothing shattered. Nothing collapsed. The world held. "I thought it would feel emptier," I said. He tilted his head. "And does it?" "No." I reached into my bag, pulled out a new envelope. White, clean, crisp, mine. He raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess," he said. "You rewrote the ending." I handed him the document. Inside, 3 lines. No ownership, no control, just choice. He read it twice, then looked at me. Really looked. "You want partnership, I want agency," I said. "I want this to be ours because we choose it, not because something ancient or broken forced us into it. And what if I say no?" I smirked. "Then I keep the fire." His eyes glinted. Tempting. He didn't ask for edits, didn't offer his version. He just took the paper, walked to the fire, and touched one edge to the flame. The paper curled, caught, and turned gold as it vanished. The heat rose. So did my heart. And when he turned back to me, slow, deliberate, unguarded, there was no ceremony. Just lips on mine, warm and sure and full of choice. I kissed him back like I'd been waiting my whole life to write this chapter myself. 6 months later, the fireplace in the new office didn't crackle with ancient magic. It ran on gas and designer aesthetics, like everything else on the penthouse floor. But I'd asked to keep the flames, because sometimes you earn the right to burn on your own terms. Lucille vanished 2 weeks after our new contract. No dramatic exit, just an empty chair and a memo that she'd moved on to other realms of influence. I didn't ask where, didn't care. Alex emailed me from Berlin. He was working with a wellness tech startup, said they let him name the app. He called it Second Draft. I smiled for an hour after reading it. As for me, I didn't just lead campaigns anymore. I helped build them from the top. Vale Holdings made me partner, not because Neron gifted me the title, but because I earned it. And because I redefined what a partner was. Sometimes that meant boardrooms, sometimes late-night rooftop strategy sessions, sometimes walking into client meetings side by side with a man who used to terrify the room by not speaking. Now, he terrifies them by asking me first. The interview was for a business magazine, one of those glossy power couples of the future spreads. I wore black, not because I needed to look sharp, because I liked how it made me feel, grounded, clear, unapologetically me. The journalist smiled as she asked the final question. "So Riley, you've worked with one of the most enigmatic CEOs in the city, rumored to be ruthless, cold, even inhuman. Were you ever afraid of him?" I paused, thought of firelight, of broken glass, of power I hadn't asked for but had learned to wield. I smiled. I wasn't afraid. I held her gaze. I just learned to be one of them,